Welcome to the dark world of the planet's most brutal prisons. Prepare for a chilling journey through the corridors of the global penitentiary system, where justice mixes with terror, and survival is a daily struggle. Imagine a place where sunlight barely penetrates, where the air is thick with the scent of fear and despair. Welcome to ADX Florence, the maximum security penitentiary in the United States. Known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, this concrete and steel fortress houses some of America's most dangerous criminals. With 490 solitary cells, each inmate spends 23 hours a day in total confinement. The isolation is so extreme that many inmates develop severe psychoses. What drives a developed country to create such an inhumane place? Now, let's travel across the world to Black Beach Prison in Equatorial Guinea. In this tropical hell, prisoners face not only the brutality of the guards, but also deadly diseases and extreme hunger. With only 500 inmates, you might think conditions would be better. But here, reality is darker than the numbers suggest. Inmates are often chained in painful positions for days, while rats and insects feast on their weakened bodies. What dark secret does this small African country hide behind the walls of this prison? Let's turn our attention to Latin America, specifically Venezuela. The Centro Penitenciario de Occidente, also known as Urena Prison, is a living nightmare. With an official capacity of 750 inmates, it currently holds over 3,000 condemned souls. Here, the law of the jungle prevails. Armed gangs control the halls, while drugs and weapons circulate freely. The guards, outnumbered and ill-equipped, barely dare to enter. How can a state lose control of such a crucial institution? Now, let's dive into the depths of the Russian penitentiary system, where Petach Prison stands as a monument to human cruelty. Located on a remote island in northern Russia, this special security facility houses criminals deemed incorrigible by the Russian state. With temperatures dropping to -40 degrees Celsius in winter, inmates face brutal cold and near total isolation. The cells, only 2.5 square meters, are smaller than many closets. What dark secrets and untold stories lie behind these frozen walls? From the extreme cold, we travel to the suffocating heat of the Middle East. Tadmor Prison in Syria was once described as the kingdom of silence and death. Before its closure in 2001 and subsequent destruction by ISIS in 2015, Tadmor was synonymous with torture and mass executions. Prisoners lived in constant terror, never knowing if the next day would be their last. Even after its closure, the horror stories from its ruins continued to haunt humanity's conscience. What drives a society to create such a dark place? Let's turn our attention to Africa, where Gitarama Central Prison in Rwanda challenges the very definition of human. Built to house 400 prisoners, it once held 7,000 desperate souls at the height of the post-genocide crisis. In cells designed for 20 people, 100 or more were crammed together. Prisoners were forced to stand for days, their feet rotting in dirty water that covered the floor. Diseases spread like wildfire, and many died of suffocation. How does a nation deal with the aftermath of genocide when the justice system itself becomes a form of collective punishment? In Asia, the infamous Bangkok Prison in Thailand, known as the Bangkok Hilton, is anything but a luxury resort. Here, prisoners sentenced to death spend their first months shackled 24 hours a day. The cells are tiny, the food rations insufficient, and violence among inmates is endemic. With a population of over 8,000 inmates, including many foreigners caught in Thailand's unforgiving justice system, Bangkok is a grim reminder of the dangers of drug tourism. What stories of regret and despair echo through its crowded halls? Back in the Western Hemisphere, San Quentin Penitentiary in California, USA, is one of the oldest continuously operating prisons in the country. Founded in 1852, its walls hold more than a century and a half of dark stories. With a population of about 3,000 inmates, including all men sentenced to death in California, San Quentin is a microcosm of the problems in the American prison system. Overcrowding, gang violence, and inadequate healthcare are just some of the challenges faced daily. What does this historic institution tell us about the evolution or lack thereof of the criminal justice system? In South America, the Central Prison of Porto Alegre, Brazil, stands as a shocking example of state neglect. Designed for 1,824 inmates, it currently holds more than 4,000. Conditions are so terrible that it has been described as a concentration camp for the poor. Disease, violence, and corruption are rampant. Prisoners control much of the facility, with authorities maintaining only a facade of control. How does one of the world's largest economies allow such inhumane conditions to persist in its prison system? As we reflect on these brutal institutions, we are forced to ask, what do these prisons say about our societies, about our humanity? Do these places truly serve the purpose of rehabilitation, or are they merely warehouses for human beings deemed disposable? The statistics are shocking. In the United States, with just 4.4% of the world's population, the country holds 22% of the world's prisoners. In Russia, the incarceration rate is 411 per 100,000 inhabitants, one of the highest in Europe. In Thailand, 70% of inmates are imprisoned for drug-related crimes. But behind these cold numbers are human stories. Stories of wrong choices, of failed systems, of societies that have failed their most vulnerable members. In many cases, these brutal prisons are the final result of much deeper social problems: poverty, inequality, systemic racism, and poorly conceived drug policies. And what about the staff of these institutions? Guards, administrators, doctors, are they also victims of this cruel system, or are they willing perpetrators? The line between victim and aggressor often becomes blurred in the shadows of these brutal prisons. As our journey through the world's most brutal prisons comes to an end, we are left with more questions than answers. What do these institutions say about the state of our civilization? Is there hope for reform, or are we doomed to repeat these cycles of brutality? One thing is certain: the world of prisons is a dark reflection of our societies, a mirror many prefer not to look into. But only by facing this reality can we hope to change it. If you were intrigued, horrified, or simply curious to learn more about the darkest corners of our global justice system, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Together, we can shed light on these crucial issues and perhaps, just perhaps, begin to make a difference. After all, the first step to change is awareness. Subscribe now and join us on this journey of discovery and reflection.